Welcome to From Caving In to Crushing It, the podcast for those who find themselves immersed in adversity and choose to write their story instead of having others write it for them. I'm Drew Deraney, and I'm your host. Hey, Rob, so good to see you.
Good to be here. Thank you, Drew. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's
Great to
my
see you
pleasure.
also.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So I always start this off by thanking the individual who introduced us. And for us, it wasn't like a direct introduction. It was through Suzanne Taylor King, STK as we call her, at one of her coaches' conversations virtual call.
Mhm.
And for some reason, I wanted to meet you, and you wanted to meet me. I don't know how it clicked, but it happened. And so I am going to give the credit to Suzanne. So thank you, Suzanne, for introducing Rob and me. So, Rob, when we're young, we're taught that life is linear. It's a straight line. And it's not a malicious teaching by our families and friends and who surrounds us. They want it to happen. And for the most part, it kind of is when we're young. We do A plus B plus C and D happens. We go to middle school, elementary school, we go to high school. Ultimately, at some point in our lives, and it's different for everybody, something happens. Some external circumstance happens that derails. It gets in between one of those letters and derails that straight line. And now we've got a circuitous route in life. We weren't expecting it. Now we have a choice. What do we do? And I think there's three types of men. Man number one is when that happens, he's got so many blind spots, he doesn't see it. And so he goes about his merry way, living life the way he was. And on his deathbed, he's got a ton of regrets. Then you got man number two, more heightened self awareness than man number one. And he sees this external circumstance out there, yet he looks at it pessimistically. He says, nah, that's a barrier to my life. I'm the victim. I'm blaming you. Life's doing it to me. I can't do anything about it. It is what it is. He goes on his merry way, doesn't change anything. He's on his deathbed with regrets, and more regrets than man number one, because he says, damn, I saw something. I could have done something, and I didn't. Then you have man number three. That's you. That's me. That's the other men I have on the show. He's the man with much higher self awareness than man number one, definitely, and definitely man number two. And he wants to do something to change his life. So when he has that same external circumstance, he says, that's an opportunity to change. That's life happening for me. I'm going to take this on and do something different. Fewer regrets on the deathbed. With all that in mind, Rob, go back as far as you need to, big or small, professional or personal. Find that defining moment in life that got you to be man number three on the bigger picture and say, I'm going to do something different. There's a better way to live. I'm going to be a different and a better Rob Wentz. We'd love to hear that.
Just going in before I even say that, going into all that you said there, it's really interesting to think that we are kind of set at a young age on a linear path with the way the school system is set up.
Yep.
And it really is a disservice to us. And conspiracy theories, whatever, whether it's designed that way on purpose or whatever.
Yeah.
But like the fact that it is a linear thing, you go to first grade through 12th grade, you go to college, and everybody kind of lays out, here's what you have to do.
Yep.
And you don't have to think too much about what you have to do.
No,
It's such a giant disservice to all of us
it is.
because it takes away all the creativity of like what the possibilities are of what we could possibly do and the billion different things that we could do. So that first of all, you saying that just kind of like sparked my brain, inspired me. Like I got to make sure my son's in fifth grade.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be going to junior high next year. I want him to go on a different course. I don't want him to go to a junior high school with hundreds of kids. I want him to have a different experience where he gets to do things differently and uses creativity. So you just kind of like inspired me right there of like, man, it is very common, but also not helpful that we are on such a laid out path for our life from the jump. That's not helpful. There needs to be more adventure. I think that life should be adventurous. God created life to be adventurous.
Yeah.
So going past that,
Love it.
for me, going back to my son, he's 10. when he was on the precipice of him being born, right? So the 9 months leading up when I knew he was coming, that was like a big, big turning point for my life. That was kind of like when I realized I couldn't be the person that I was when he's born and have him see that version of me play out,
Yeah.
right? That version of me, drug addiction, um, just very selfish, very caught up in me. Not saying I have this thing figured out because I don't, but
Right.
I was very wrapped up in me, and it was like me first. What do I need? And how am I going to get what I want?
Mm.
And I can remember when I started getting into personal development during this period, and I was listening to Tony Robbins, and Tony Robbins talked about, to be successful in business, you have to be of service. And
Mm.
this is how 10 years ago, this is how much different of a person I was. I heard him say that, and I was like, why would I need to be of service to somebody else for me to be successful? That I swear that did not make any
Yeah.
sense. So that's
Right.
that's how far off I was. And
Okay.
so that was just a great example. That right there, and for me, is a great example of, okay, that's where my head was at. I did not even understand the value of service.
Okay.
And so as my son came into the world, as most parents do, not all, but most, and the really good ones do, they become self-aware. They're like, holy smokes,
Yeah.
I need to be of service to this kid because he needs me. He
Mm.
needs an example. I need to be the example. And I didn't feel like I was the person at that point in time that was a good example for him. And so that kind of sparked my growth, which is the true for a lot of guys. I know for a
Yes.
lot of guys,
Yes.
purpose doesn't really come into your life until you have kids. And then it
Yes.
kind
Yeah.
of kickstarts a new side of you, and honestly, it opens up your heart in a brand new way.
It does.
So for me, that was the big, big moment.
Wow. So since you said that, describe that moment where you saw him for the first time and held him for the first time. The thoughts and feelings.
Well, it was like, what am I gonna do? I think was the thought and feeling. Like,
I
okay,
love that.
here's the
I
baby.
want to. What do I do now?
Now what are we gonna do? We got to take him home. Oh crap. They prepare you for the hospital and all the things that are going to happen, but then like, they just I remember holding them being like, it's like a feeling of like, 'cause there's so much happening in the hospital and there's all these
Yeah.
people there and
Mhm.
there's blood everywhere and there's you know it's just like controlled chaos in some
Yeah.
way. Then your family all shows up. So for the first couple of days, you're in like this holding container that's not reality.
Mhm.
And you're like, oh wow, people are in here. They're all holding him. The baby's fine. He's doing fine. The nurses come and take him, at night so you can get
Yeah.
some rest. And
Yeah.
um,
Oh, yeah.
but I recall thinking like, what about when all this is done? Then what? Like this unknown, right? The unknown of life. And I think for me that was a lot of it. I've had to learn how to embrace the unknown as somebody who I grew up with a lot of fear, just a lot of
Yeah.
fear.
Okay.
And the fear is of the unknown, like
Of
what's
course.
going to happen and not knowing what's going to happen and not being prepared for it. So for me, that was a thing then. I can remember being just like, oh crap, I'm not equipped for this. I don't know what I'm going to do with all this. So I'd love to say it was like I'd love to say it was this like epiphany. This
Yeah.
is it. Everything's starting over again. This is gonna be amazing. No, it was like,
Yeah.
geez, man, I don't know what I'm gonna do next. I don't know what we're doing here,
Yeah. I
But
totally understand. Yeah.
life works. Life works itself out. And that's one of the things I love about life is you can worry about everything. I keep teaching myself this lesson over and over again. Like you can worry about things all day long, man, but look, you're still here.
Yeah.
Things are way better than I could have ever imagined they would have been
Yeah.
before. And I'm like, wow, this are they where I want them to be? No, but that's not, it's a whole gratitude concept. Just be grateful for where you're sitting right now and that, you're still here, you're still doing it, and you're
Mhm.
still moving forward.
Right. Absolutely.
Um,
Moving forward piece is important. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting the number 10 because 10 years after your son's born, he's now going to be a big brother.
yeah,
So you have a 0-year-old right now.
yeah.
How's that going?
Ask me at 3 a.m.
I love
how
it.
it's going. I'll have a
Uh,
different answer for you at 3 a.m. than I
yeah.
do right now.
Wow.
Uh, but it's good in the sense that, well, kids are a blessing, number
Right.
one. Like, if there's one thing we were clearly put on the earth to do, it's reproduce.
Hmm.
So, and I love kids. Newborns are difficult because you're still just keeping them alive. They're cute,
Yeah.
but they're kind of a pain in the butt, right? So, and not that we're all a pain in the butt in some way, shape, or form,
Yeah.
but I love kids to death. So for me, it's exciting, but it also lights a fire underneath me of Rob. Like, okay, I only expected to have one kid. This was a new marriage,
Hmm.
and my wife hadn't had any kids, so um, she really wanted kids bad, and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Like, I I I didn't plan on this a second time around, but we're
Yeah.
here, and I'm
Yeah.
excited to do it.
Mm.
Let's go for it, and it's going to help me grow again. So
Yeah.
I look at it as it's also interesting, man, because when I had Max, my first son, I was in radio broadcasting. I was in radio for 20 years,
Wow.
and that him being born led me on this personal development journey to
Mm.
leave radio and start my entrepreneur journey. So I
Right.
started that 7.5 years ago.
Okay.
He was like 3, and I got into digital marketing, started the digital marketing company.
Okay.
And so that digital marketing company, I stopped that in 2021 to go into coaching. So I got certified in coaching. And
Okay.
if anybody's in coaching, which Drew, you are,
Hmm.
you know that the journey in coaching is not like off to the races right off the
No.
bat, right? There's a
No.
couple years of
No. And
there's a learning curve.
not linear either.
Ah, yes, not linear at all. And so the learning curve in coaching has been like what I've found is you have to start small and handle what you get and do well with it, and then you will increase. And that's been my case over the past 3 years. But looking at this, I have my new son, Alexander, and I'm kind of restarting this again. So I have another career that I just started, not saying that it is devoid, it's not separated from the broadcasting career, the social media, digital marketing career, because those are playing into what I do now. And I'm using those effectively, but it's like starting over again. So I look at it like, okay, where were you at 10 years ago? I'm glad you're bringing this up because where was I at 10 years ago with Max?
Yeah.
I had just started personal development. I'm 10
Okay.
years into that. And I think when we live our lives in 10-year sprints or increments, looking at our lives in 10-year spans, you really start to see, okay, you're at a new phase. You may hit a glass ceiling, you
Yeah.
hit like your threshold, and now you need a new breakthrough. And I
Mm.
feel like I'm right there again. New sun, new career. It's growing, increasing, getting better and better.
Mm.
So look for that next level of breakthrough. Look for the next level of development because that's what I need right now. So I think that periods in time give you this inclination like you've grown a lot here, but if you want to keep growing, you've really got to get uncomfortable again, and nothing like a new baby to make you get uncomfortable
Oh gosh.
again,
Absolutely.
and a new career for
Uh,
that, and turning 40. I turned 40 last year, so it really is like a turning point. I really think that like a second life kind of deal.
it is, and I like how you said you get to grow again. We're always growing. Sometimes we don't consciously realize that,
Or we consciously don't want to,
or don't
you
want
know.
to. So
Like I don't
so
want to go anymore.
so I'm thinking. So at 30 years old, new parent, and realizing you need to do something different about yourself, and you start the journey. Now you're 10 years into that journey. You're gonna be a different kind of parent.
Yeah.
Wonder what that difference is gonna be.
Well, hopefully wiser,
Mm.
hopefully more patient. Although I feel like I was a pretty darn patient parent first time around. I feel like I did a good job.
Hmm.
Um, it's a good question, man. Well, I guess we'll
Think about
see.
that. Yeah. So when I have you back in 10 years, we'll have
Yeah.
part two and we'll find out what the difference was.
I love your arc for the podcast, man.
Oh,
You're going
thank
along
you.
with this. That's
Thank
good.
you. Thank you. All right.
That's a really good question though.
Yeah.
What will my new phase of parenting be like?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I got to sit down and really think about that. What do I want it to look like?
It's going to be interesting when you think about Alexander taking his first step. Can you recall that memory when Max took his first step? And how did you react, behave, feel? And then when the step became when they cruise along the couch and then they, all those things, the first word, um, those are all things I still remember. And I kept keepsakes all the way from 0 years old up to a certain age.
That's
And
cool.
each of the three kids, none of us have opened. We haven't opened it yet. I guess they're not ready. I haven't. I bought the newspaper from the day that each of them were born, and
That's
we've yet to
cool.
open it. It's still in the bag from the day they were born, and none of my kids were interested. Now my 22-year-old is slowly asking about the keepsake you talk about. We should sit down and take a look. I said, whenever you're ready. I don't even remember what I put in it. I know their first tooth is in there and all this kind of stuff, but I did have a piece of paper, all three kids, where I wrote down their first word and kept writing every time the second word, third word, fourth. So I don't remember what the first word was in it, but I will when I go through that. So
That's a
that's
cool idea,
something you
man.
may have some fun with. Um,
Yeah, I
yeah,
like that.
yeah, yeah.
One thing I do know the second time around is I have much more perspective, which is a great thing to realize. Like my wife's she's a new mother. She's
Yep.
never had a kid before.
Right,
So
right. Yeah.
all the things for her, it's like, yeah, like I know what the newborn phase is going to be like. So I'm not shocked. Not that it's not hard or exhausting, because it is. It's just tiring, because
That's going to be interesting. Think about this. It's going to be interesting because when you're tired and emotional, you may slip back into I'm a second time parent and unconsciously forget that your wife is a first time parent. So perhaps you want to make sure that before you say something that, oh yeah, that's easy, or this piece, that,
yeah.
oh wow, she hasn't done this before,
Mm,
kind of thing. Because it's interesting. So
hmm. Yeah, it's good food for thought.
yeah, yeah. So now professionally, all these different changes, what you're doing now, tell the audience what you're doing now and how you've taken a lot of that first entrepreneurship with the digital media and a lot of the second one with the coaching. Lead us that way, and what you're doing now.
Well, yeah, I'm a leadership communication coach. And
Okay.
so what that means is I help people communicate better. The better a communicator we are, the better a leader we're going to be. So I work with individuals, organizations, teams, businesses to help improve their communication, which with processes and systems,
Mhm.
so they become better organizations with better leaders. We all should thrive. We all should strive to be personal leaders of our own lives. We're going to thrive
Mhm.
if we do strive for that goal. A lot of people avoid leadership and a lot of people avoid communicating because it can be scary, intimidating. They don't want to rock the boat. There's a million different reasons why we don't
Yeah.
communicate effectively. We never saw it. We never had anything to model it from.
Yep.
And so I'm a big believer in you make your mess your message. My mess in my life was that I was a poor communicator,
Yep.
which landed me in radio at a young age. I didn't realize why I was in radio when I was 15 years old, but it was because I didn't know how to be me. I didn't know how to it was like a version of me on the inside that I didn't know how to get out. And
Mhm.
so I went into radio, went into broadcasting unknowingly to figure that out. That didn't even
Mhm.
occur to me until I left radio, which is
Interesting.
crazy. But
Yeah.
that's what I was doing. It was like this like going back to the whole perspective concept, man. Perspective is so wild because you don't see things when you're in them.
No.
You see them for what they are as you're well removed from them, and you're like, holy cow, that's what was going on there.
Mhm.
And so I love coaching, number one, because I think if you go into personal development and you make that a big part of your life,
Yeah.
you become addicted to it.
Yeah.
And
True.
you'll say to yourself, you'll hear people say, I'll hear somebody say well, if I quit this, I could go do this, this, and this. And I'm thinking, quit this. There's no way for me to turn this ship around.
Mhm.
I burned the boats. This is
Yeah.
what I do. I could never go back to the old me.
Right.
I could never go back to not continuously learning and growing because it's so rewarding
It is.
and it's so fulfilling.
Yep.
And so that led me into coaching. I was doing my podcast years ago, and I met a woman who was a coach for 20 years.
Wow.
And she's like, if you ever want to do this, if you ever wanted to be a coach, I would love to train you in coaching. And a year went by, I was going through my divorce, and I was doing digital marketing, and depressed, honestly, Drew.
Yeah.
I was so sick of sitting in front of a computer, which I'm doing now, but I'm talking to you. But I'll sit in front of a computer just running Facebook ads, just doing like, oh, just mindless stuff it was torture. It felt like I felt like I was being tormented
Yeah.
every day.
Right.
And so I got trained in coaching, and she actually guided guided me through the divorce
Right.
while she was training me in coaching. So it was just an incredible experience.
Wow.
And I landed up right where I'm supposed to be. And my broadcasting background plays right into it too, right? Because all those years I was broadcasting and I was doing it for me,
Right.
but just I got so many comments of how many people's lives I impacted when I was in broadcasting. I still get these today,
That's great.
even though I haven't been on the air in 7 years.
Yeah.
And what I saw was like, well, I wasn't even trying to impact people's lives, and I was. So what if I was intentional about
Yeah.
impacting people's lives? Imagine the lives that I could have an impact on.
True.
And so that led me into like, man, you've already unknowingly been this person, been like a communications leader
Yeah.
throughout your life. You just didn't own it. So now what if you owned it? What if you actually lived from that
True.
and helped people? That sounds like a pretty good place to be.
Love that.
Um, I don't know if that answered the question or not, but that kind of landed me
No,
where I am now in
the
coaching.
the digital. I mean, it's important. The digital media stuff. I mean, I
And digital
understand.
media, you have to understand the landscape we live in,
It's
at least
communication
somewhat.
too. It's all
Yeah.
if you're communicating effectively on social media, that's different from communicating effectively in person with somebody versus. So you have to be flexible and adaptable in all those different mediums to communicate effectively. And what you're doing, even for companies, what they learn on how to communicate effectively professionally, it's important for them to think, hey, if I can take this and take the same thing that Rob just taught me and bring it personally. Because effective communication is going to enhance any kind of relationship. And I think that's why we're seeing like 60% divorce rate because the couples don't know how to communicate effectively with each other.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
that's something when I went into business coaching, I started in life coaching and then got a business certification.
Yeah.
It was because I wanted to help more people. And I also, there's more money in business coaching, right? So
Right.
I wanted to work for me, but I also wanted to work for others. And I looked at it like, okay, so if I work with teams and businesses, now I'm working with a lot of individuals at once,
Right.
and I can impact all of them because everything professional comes back to personal. So it's like giving people what they want, but at the same time, giving them what they need
Absolutely.
because they need the personal growth. They want the
Absolutely.
professional growth.
I love that. Briefly touch on you mentioned a podcast. You still doing the podcast?
Of course, yeah, the Unstuck movement. The concept is we all have places that we're stuck at in life. Everybody gets stuck somewhere. In order to get unstuck, you have to move. So the Unstuck movement, making that movement that breaks you free from the chains that are holding you back. The tagline is true testimonies of breakthrough, right? So they're true testimonies from real people who have had incredible breakthroughs in their lives, personally and professionally. And so the podcast lends right into my coaching, right? It's the same thing that I do in coaching, but just telling these stories from people who've already had these breakthroughs
Right.
on the podcast. And it's been amazing. It's been so, I mean, obviously 20 years in broadcasting. I love broadcasting. It's a part of just who I am naturally. I was doing a pretend radio show in my bedroom when I was 10 years old, right? So I love broadcasting. So I wanted to bring that back, but I wanted to bring it back with a purpose. Like I
Yeah.
said before, the old me was doing it for me. Now I want to do it to help others, which still, when you work to help others, it also benefits you. So everybody wins, not just
Very
you.
true. Very true. Well, Rob, certainly the audience has certainly captured the essence of Rob Wentz, and they're going to want to get in touch with you. So, folks, follow my lead here. Go to leadimpacttransform.com.
Yes.
Leadimpacttransform.com. What you'll see there, it's Rob's website. You will be able to schedule a call with him, and you also get to see what he's doing and learn more from about for what you learned right now, and it'll make more sense when you look at his website. So please do that. So, Rob,
Thanks, Drew.
you're welcome. Before we end, I want to ask you two final questions. All right. So now I'm going to give you the opportunity Use your imagination. You're sitting down with 7 to 10-year-old Rob, and you want to give him advice about life. What are you going to tell
Well, I think the biggest thing, especially when we're young, is who are our friends?
him?
So who are we friends with?
Mm-hmm.
Do they match who you are? So 7 to 10 year old, I mean, this is a hard thing to tell a 10-year-old, but at the same time, the friends that I had when I was 10, and then when I was 15, 20, those guys, a lot of them ended up in jail. A lot of them ended up in drug rehabs. Some of them are dead. So I would just encourage myself, find friends that build you up and that like to do exciting things. Friends that are fun to be around and don't drag you down.
Yeah.
Somebody who really, when you tell them something that you think is cool, they celebrate in you thinking that is cool.
Yeah.
And not make fun of you for it.
Yeah.
Right? Find those friends that really are meaningful. And this is really probably more speaking to the 18-year-old me than the 10-year-old me.
Yep.
But just like this intention, be very intentional in who you are friends with, who you talk to, who you connect with. And this is more even of a message maybe to my parents of my 10-year-old self, is like, find me a mentor, find me somebody who's going to guide me and steer me in the right direction. Because I could have really benefited from somebody. And I didn't have bad parents. They just were parents. They were busy.
We
We
don't
had
listen to our
multiple kids.
parents. You need a mentor. You're gonna listen
Yeah.
I used to
Yeah,
whisper
exactly.
to my kids' mentors what I wanted them to do.
Yeah.
More than
That's it. That's it right there. Yeah. So that's
great.
it, man. Just I wish I would have had somebody who was like always like encouraging me,
Yeah.
pushing me, and just making sure that I was somebody who's just intentional with you, who doesn't like cut any corners with you,
Right.
but is also like, they're there for you.
Yeah.
But they're also a little bit hard on you. They push you outside of your comfort zone.
Yes.
So I don't know if it's something you could tell a 10-year-old, but that's like what I really knew
That's
that I
okay.
needed.
This is your imagination. You know he's not going to listen anyway. So this is cool. That's great advice. Switch hats. Now you're sitting with young Rob, the young businessman entrepreneur, and you want to give him advice about business. What are you going to tell him?
Pay attention. Pay attention to your money.
Yeah.
Pay attention to what am I doing? Am I being intentional with what I'm doing? And disciplined in what I'm doing.
Okay.
Just because I think I had a lot of like early success in digital marketing just because it was something that was hot 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it worked really well, but I didn't learn what I needed to learn in business.
Mm.
So I didn't learn like what to do with my money. I didn't learn how to scale. A bunch of different things that I'm still, honestly, still learning now, but I'm much better at them now than I was then. And so just being aware of those things. And, I think what it really comes down to is whatever's scaring you, go handle that thing.
Wow.
So if the money's scaring you, so you're ignoring it,
Yeah.
do the opposite. The money's scaring you, so you need to pay attention to it.
I love that. Do it scared. And you're right. Pay attention to your body, man. If you realize you're scared, that's like, maybe that's my body telling me go do it.
If you find yourself avoiding something,
Yeah.
if it's on my to-do list and it's on there for a month, and I'm like, dude, why is this thing still on here? It's because I'm avoiding it because I'm scared of it. I need to just do it.
Absolutely.
Put it at the top of the list and do it.
Oh, I love it. Great advice, my friend. Well, listen, Rob, I want to thank you not only for coming on, but for coming into my life, becoming a friend, and keep doing what you're doing. You're helping a lot of people. And again, I thank you for being here, my friend.
Thanks, Drew. Same to you. I'm looking forward to you telling your story on the Unstuck movement.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. You're welcome. Hey, everybody, take care of yourselves, please. Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and give us a review to help others find it. I'd like you to answer this question. Are you living the life you want to live, or are you living the life others want you to live? I'd like you to think about that for a second. because I strongly suggest you live the life you want to live. If you want to learn more about what I stand for and my services and how I'm able to help many men get out of their own way, please go to my website at www.profitcompassion.com. Feel free to also email me at drew@profitcompassion.com. I'd love to have a conversation with you. Take care of yourself and choose to write your own story instead of letting others write it for you.